Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Waldrop, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. Thank you for joining us this morning for the 2021 State of Downtown Pittsburgh Reforge edition. This is the fifth in a series of 6 important discussions as we envision the future of downtown and review the impact of an unprecedented year. Yesterday, we released the 2021 State of Downtown Pittsburgh report, which I encourage you to check out online on our website. We'll also send you a link following this discussion. We're in this special session to discuss public safety and helping our most vulnerable populations in downtown Pittsburgh. This is a critical issue facing downtown. It's one of the most common questions we're asked. Is downtown safe? Or, I'm not sure how to respond to someone that appears to be experiencing homelessness or has other needs. How do I help? Well, we've assembled a group of people to talk about the important work underway in our public safety and human services fields. Over the last several years, the police and human services agencies and providers have been having important conversations around helping our most vulnerable while keeping people safe. We're now seeing these many conversations turn to action, shifting models of service delivery and seeing real change in the efficacy of this work. We all know this type of change takes courageous leaders who are willing to listen, learn, and act. And this has started at the top of our public safety department under the leadership of the Director of Public Safety, Wendell Histrich. Under Director Histrich's leadership, the city is making changes large and small to improve the ways in which services are delivered. His ability to look across agencies and assemble resources that help tackle these complex issues of public safety and support cannot be understated. Thank you for joining us, Director Histrich. I'd like to ask you to provide some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Downtown Pittsburgh may have seemed like it has been in a pause for the last year. However, public safety, the mayor's office, Allegheny Health Network, the Allegheny County Department of Human Services, and the Second Avenue Common Project have been continuing to work to make downtown a better and safer place for the return of normalcy. Our goal is to prevent the problems before they occur, rather than to respond to crimes and have to investigate it after they occur. Unfortunately, some crimes will occur, whether it's in Pittsburgh, New York, Boston, or any other major city. Due to the fact that the violent crimes, and thankfully are rare in the city of Pittsburgh, when they do occur, they are always newsworthy. Today, you will hear about what's being done to try to prevent the crimes. Many of these items that you will hear about actually don't make the news on a daily basis. Regularly, we are asked by the media that why don't we just shut businesses down that create problems? I don't think that that's an answer. Rather, we would rather try to work with the businesses to improve their atmosphere, their security systems, and their relationship with the public. This has already been done on numerous occasions throughout the past year, and we've already seen some successful results. I thank everyone for joining us today, and we welcome your questions, and we will try to answer them, if not today, down the road. With that being said, I have the great pleasure on National Police Week to introduce our police chief, Scott Schubert. Chief.
Thank you, Director, and it's an honor to be here, and very excited with the opportunities that we have in Pittsburgh and especially downtown. As we all know, downtown Pittsburgh is the hub of activity for our region, and all of us want it to be successful and safe, and we're committed to that on behalf of the Pittsburgh Police and all of public safety, to work hand in hand with the residents downtown, with the business owners, people that work, and we recognize that we have to work together. We can't just make up plans on here's how we're going to help you and here's what we're going to do to make the community safer. We recognize that we have to work together and see what you want and what you see, because you're there all the time. I'm very excited with what's going on with the community of health and safety, which you're going to hear a lot about with the vulnerable populations, with our homelessness, addiction, and mental health. A lot of things that we do see downtown because of that. But arresting people for those isn't always the right solution. Oftentimes it just creates further problems, for the individual and for people around. We really got to get the help that they need. And I think you're going to really enjoy the presentation in the panel. As I said, Pittsburgh Police, we're committed to helping and working with each of you. Our community engagement office, Sergeant Tiffany Costa, and everybody that's involved with that have been doing an amazing job walking around the communities. I've been joining them as well. They've been downtown. They do the Chesson Market Square. They help deliver hot meals. They're out there trying to really get to know people and be visible. And it's all about relational policing. We need to be able to work with you and to gain your trust. And the only way you can do that is talking to people and getting to know people. And then you can develop that relationship. Zone 2, under the leadership of Acting Commander Matt Lackner, has been doing a fantastic job. He's out there. I see him out on the streets. He's increased the amount of officers walking the beats downtown, especially during the court times, trying to be as mindful for the residents and the business owners, the restaurants, everything that goes on in the downtown area. So they're doing an incredible job. And as I said, we're committed. And, we've gone through a lot over the last year, all of us have. And we're really looking forward to all of the businesses and everything else coming back to a normal, and us being a part of that to help make a difference in the lives of all of you and for the city of Pittsburgh. So we're excited about this. Every challenge brings new opportunities, and we embrace those opportunities, and we look forward to working with each of you, and look forward to hearing the panel discussion today as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate, again, the leadership that you and Director Hisrich have provided. To your point, we can't police our way out of many of the issues that folks are experiencing in downtown Pittsburgh, and your willingness and interest in community policing and establishing those relationships is evident from the top down. The leadership through Acting Commander Lackner and his team in Zone 2 has been much appreciated by our organization, our stakeholders, the residents, the businesses here in downtown Pittsburgh. We know that there's still plenty of work to do, but we're confident in your leadership and the abilities of you and your teams to get the work done. I now have the pleasure of introducing Linda Metropolis. She's president of Metropolis Development, LLC, and board chair of Second Avenue Commons. Linda's going to walk us through the Second Avenue Commons project, a truly one-of-a-kind public-private partnership that will be one of the most impactful projects we've seen in recent years, supporting people who have no place to turn and replacing the winter shelter that's been located at the Smithfield United Church of Christ. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to working with you as you steward this transformative project into supporting downtown Pittsburgh.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here to give you kind of a first look on Second Avenue Commons. We have a new logo just as of a couple of months ago, and I need to start by saying I'm really representing dozens of people who've worked on this project over the last year and a half. The leadership, the civic leadership that came together to start the city on the path to create this new low barrier shelter and SRO building is just phenomenal. With leadership through the Allegheny Conference, PNC Bank, Highmark, UPMC, and the larger foundations, R.K. Mellon, Heinz Endowments, Pittsburgh Foundation, the Hillman Foundation, a few others. We've raised over $20 million to build this new 45,000 square foot building to serve people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. So I've got a few slides to show you. We are in the ground, just doing subsurface work at this point, and we've got about a 12 to 14 month construction period, depending upon how quickly we can get building materials, which you may know are in short supply right now. But let's go to the next slide. So Second Avenue Commons will be a year-round low barrier shelter, and the low barrier is really important because it will allow us to accept people who have pets, who have partners. We don't accept people with children, but people who are have a lot of possessions, they want to come into a building, and those may be reasons people haven't gotten help in the past. So we're removing that those barriers. There'll be abundant wraparound services, and I neglected to say that the county executive and the Department of Human Services has been so integral to this whole process, and actually will be very involved in selecting the operator of the shelter services and funding the ongoing operations. So in addition to the money raised for the development, we have resources available to run the program. As I said, dozens of people have been involved in this, and early on we agreed that the principles would include dignity, personal control, safety, privacy, harm reduction, trauma-informed care, and flexibility. As you can imagine, a lot of people who are housing challenged, who may be at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness already, can often be preyed upon. So it's really important to address those issues as well. Let's go to the next slide. After this slide, I don't have a lot more words on slides. They're mostly pictures, but this is what has been designed to fit into this new 45,000 square foot building on Second Avenue. It's 700 Second Avenue, and it is immediately adjacent to the Liberty Bridge. So it's one of the few parcels of land still available. The city donated the land, and as I said, construction is already underway. So 5-story building. At the heart of the project is a new shelter with 95 beds. And then during those cold weather months, we can actually expand the number of beds available to an additional 42 individuals. So it's a big part of what will happen in this building on a daily basis. And we will include space for pets and storage facilities and hygiene facilities and everything that might be needed to enable people to move into the building and get some of the help that they need. Also, the project will have a daytime drop-in center, and that's designed for people who aren't necessarily interested in using the shelter, but still have needs. They'll be able to come in and connect with case management, take a shower, wash their clothes, grab their mail, be inside for time in a common area, and just really trying to help people get off the street as a first step of making connection to the services that will be available in this facility. One of the most amazing things about this project, and I do love talking about this project, is that both Highmark and UPMC made significant financial commitments to the project. So where Highmark's money is coming in during development, UPMC is creating a clinic in the building. It's quite amazing. So we believe that that will be just a wonderful partnership. They'll be providing services, both physical and behavioral health, and drug and alcohol supports. Commercial kitchen will be included in the building, and people who are actually part of the shelter will be able to get breakfast and dinner in the building at no cost. And then on the top 2 floors, since if you're building a building and you have a little extra room above, then go ahead and use that space. And it's really been well designed to include 45 units of single room occupancy, designed to create like another step for people who are maybe coming off the street for their day or coming into the building for 30 to 60 days and getting the supportive services they need, and then maybe moving upstairs into the building with more permanent housing. So that in a nutshell is the degree of services that will be provided. As I said, DHS at the county will be providing the support for the shelter, the drop-in center. UPMC is providing the support for the clinic. There'll be a variety of funding sources for the commercial kitchen, and then also a variety of sources for the single room occupancy, which means there'll be a variety of opportunities for people to also support and the project moving forward. And so eventually we'll have that on our website about what those opportunities might be. So, you'll be able to get in touch with us if you're interested in supporting the project. But I've got some pictures. So let's go to the next slide. So you may know this project before, called Second Avenue Commons, was called Project Care. So this hasn't gotten updated quite yet. But this is if you're on Second Avenue. So it looks like a 4-story building. There's a great deal of elevation. It's actually another floor under the street level floor here. But we wanted a really good address, easy for people to find. So entrance will be actually off of Second Avenue into this, this floor, which is technically the second floor. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is if you were standing on a ladder on top of the courthouse, this is what you would see with the bridge to the left and technically the back of the building, but there you can see the 5 stories. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm not going to overwhelm you with all sorts of floor plans. I have more kind of descriptive things, but just to give you a sense of the 3rd floor, which is the shelter floor. So again, 92 beds. The overflow won't be on this floor. It'll be on the lower floor during the winter months, but you can see we've got a variety of housing options. We've got bunk rooms, but we also have high acuity rooms, which for people who may not be well suited to move into a bunk bed or may need a little bit more privacy or care, we have an opportunity for smaller rooms, which we call the high acuity rooms, and then for hygiene centers to support the 92 people that would be living in this space. And then I've got just a few renderings. So I think there are 3 renderings. If we can go to the next slide. This is what our cafeteria would look like. We would imagine that there would be 2 or 3 shifts of people eating, but beautiful colors. We designed with trauma-informed design principles. So you'll see these very kind of calm, cool colors. Go to the next slide. This is a 3rd floor, the lobby on the 3rd floor. So you come off the elevator, and again, just a very warm, inviting space, an area people can, connect with one another or use computers. One more slide, please. This is an image of what an SRO potentially would look like. I love the fact that there's like a coffee press on the shelf. It's really meant to be it is designed to be a very functional space, only about 110 square feet. So people who are moving into the SROs are in effect signing leases. And again, these could be long-term solutions, just as most of the SROs downtown, some people live there a week and some people live there 20 years. So we're not making any assumptions. We're just creating a space where people actually can live and get up in the morning and go to work, but have a refrigerator and microwave to be able to have meals as well. I think there's one more image. This is on the ground floor. Again, just picking up that really beautiful, calming color palette that we hope will help to really encourage people to come into the building and to get the services that they need. So I think that's it. There's maybe one more just with our email address and our beautiful logo. So again, probably 12 months from now, 14 months from now, we'll be ready for a ribbon cutting, and we'll be so anxious to bring this building into service for the people who need it most in the area. So I think it's going back to Jeremy now.
Yes, thank you so much, Linda, for your leadership in this effort and for providing some insights into this new facility, supporting those in need in downtown Pittsburgh. It is certainly a big improvement from the services and experience actually being provided at the current cold weather shelter. The leadership of PNC, Highmark, UPMC, the philanthropic community, the city, and the county is true to form for us here in Pittsburgh. That's the way we get things done here, through partnerships and collaboration. Before I introduce the moderator and get us into the discussion, I want to let you know as audience members that you're able to participate, you're able and encouraged to participate by submitting your questions to the panelists using the Q&A feature button at the bottom of your screen. We'll allow for time near the end of the discussion to answer as many audience questions as we can. So please feel free to enter those into that feature throughout the discussion. I'm going to turn the session over now to Laura Dragowski. She's manager of the city's Pittsburgh Office of Community Health and Safety and has been at the forefront coordinating services and collaboration amongst the city's public safety services, as well as developing deep relationships with service providers to help the city's most vulnerable populations. Laura, thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate you moderating this important discussion.
Jeremy, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I want to thank all of the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership members who are here today, all of the community members, and especially Jeremy, Caitlin, Linda, Colton, and their team for affording us this opportunity. I think what we've learned through the pandemic, and certainly before, is that the community is strongest when we're supporting one another. And that isn't just neighbor to neighbor, that's public-private partnerships, as Linda discussed. It's relationships between service providers and our public safety partners. That's something we've long known, really, is that we find ourselves in a situation in this nation where when someone's in trouble, whether it's a safety issue or it's something related to mental well-being, people call 911. That's the call to make for being safe. And yet we know that when 911 is called, that often puts our first responders in a situation to address a situation, an issue that's outside of the purview of their training. We've long known this, and in the last year, we've had the opportunity to work with a really engaged and responsive group of partners with the Allegheny Health Network, with our public safety partners, with the Allegheny County Health Department, Department of Human Services, and many of you who are here, to try to reimagine and revision how we're doing this work. So the new Office of Community Health and Safety briefly will be looking at, as Jeremy said, how do we bring partnerships in to strengthen our safety net? How do we make sure that people who have unmet needs are able to build relationships, trusting relationships with people who will then be able to shepherd them through the processes to find housing, to access healthcare, to access mental health supports, to access supports for substance use. Many of the challenges that we know people have faced prior to this pandemic, but that have certainly been exacerbated over that time. As Chief Schubert said, our focus is on safety. And that means a lot of things. We want to make sure that residents, visitors, business owners downtown feel safe and are able to thrive in that environment. And as the director said, a lot of what's going on is under the radar and maybe sometimes by design. We want to really be able to foster those programs and that growth so that they're durable and they're sustainable. And the most important thing is that they're agile. We know that there's a lot of work to be done and that we're not necessarily getting it right at the first try. But with the leadership of Director Hisrick, Mayor Peduto, and our partners across this county, and certainly within the downtown community, we know that we can continue to collaborate, work together so that we're not hashing out issues in the comments section of the news, but rather having meetings like this and discussions across time so that we can really figure this out and do this right. So I'm gonna ask my fellow friends on the panel to turn on their cameras, and I'm gonna take this moment to introduce our panelists. And I'm gonna assume you've all got your cameras on because I can't quite tell. So first is Dan Palka, who is the director for the Program for Homelessness and Urban Poverty Medicine at Allegheny Health Network. Dan comes to us with experience supervising the winter shelter, as well as street outreach, also having done work overseas, relief work overseas. So comes with broad experience, and now will be bringing online teams across the city to co-respond with law enforcement, EMS, and to build relationships with community members so that they can move through our services and have healthy, thriving engagements. Second is Jen Batterton. Jen is the manager of special initiatives at the Allegheny County Department of Human Services. And Jen, which I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk through, shepherded the process for the crisis response stakeholder group engagement and planning process. So really, how do we strengthen those safety nets that we already have, and how do we build new ones? Jen also is served as a lawyer, working on behalf of clients around supportive housing, eviction prevention, and has an extremely diverse background in law as well. And finally is Lieutenant Lackner, Matt Lackner. Matt is the acting commander in Zone 2, and very fortunately for us, also started his career in patrol in Zone 2, and was served as the director of the police academy. On a very just personal note, as a colleague, I think that Matt has been such an excellent asset to the Zone 2 and downtown area, really helping to build community, working with our residents and our business owners, as well as recognizing the challenges that some of our neighbors are facing, and working with his officers and our partners at AHN and elsewhere to address those. So I want to thank you all and make sure that everybody's cameras are on now. I think they are. Kicking this off, I wanted to put this out to the group. Before the pandemic, there was certainly a perception among many that there were some unsafe situations downtown. In the last year, we've seen the population of people downtown reduce significantly, and people feel that maybe this sense of unsafety, these issues have been exacerbated. I want to ask the group, do you believe that that's the case, and what are your thoughts? Maybe I'll start with you, Lieutenant Lackner.
So violent crime that has occurred over the past few months in particular does get a lot of attention, as it should. But what I can say is, by and large, it's isolated. By and large, people that are committing these crimes are known to us. Our officers form relationships with people who are committing these crimes. Unfortunately, many times the people being victimized are experiencing homelessness, drug addiction, or things of that nature. But then also, oftentimes, we're able to either make arrests or get these folks the help they need. If you look at crime statistics overall, downtown as a neighborhood, particularly during the pandemic, crime statistics are very low compared to some of the other city neighborhoods and regional neighborhoods, but they do get the bulk of the attention. So some of it is unfair, Not to say we shouldn't highlight some of those things, but by and large, safety overall is really good downtown, and we welcome people to spend time there.
And I think
And I'll just add to that the emphasis on, the individuals who are most victimized by these events are, as Lieutenant Lackner said, people that are already in really vulnerable situations. So I know that perhaps the perception is that these are the individuals who are driving some of the violent crime that we see. And in some circumstances that's true, but more often than not, it's that some of the individuals that you may see downtown or are most visible are frequently on a daily basis the victims of these crimes. And often they go unnoticed by the general public. This is a super resilient population. So yeah, I think recognizing that they are more often the victims than the aggressors in these situations.
Jen, on the Department of Human Services side, what are you all seeing regarding indicators maybe of safety challenges downtown?
Yeah, sure. So I think I would echo what Commander Lackner and Dan said. Taking a look at the data from our end, we have seen in our 911 dispatch data that overdoses have increased. So dispatches around overdoses have increased downtown, but otherwise across the board in terms of types of dispatches for 911, they're even lower than typically. But I think just the old adage of safety in numbers is really being challenged these days. Like things feel more desolate downtown with fewer people coming to work and going to restaurants. And I think perhaps the folks who are downtown and not doing those things may seem more visible. The ratio is just different right now. But in terms of safety, I think the data speaks to that crime is not up per se, but as we know across the board, the pandemic has exacerbated folks' behavioral health needs, not just people downtown, but for many people across the country and the world. And so from the human services perspective, we just know, both because of the pandemic and because we want to step up in new ways, that there needs to be just attention and outreach to individuals with behavioral health challenges right now and always.
I think there's the line that we hear really often, which is we can't arrest our way out of it. I think that's been said for a long time, and maybe it's really come to a head in recent years, where we know that the services that someone may need to recover or heal aren't being made available in carceral systems. And so people then may come out of those situations in a worse shape than they were in. And so I'm wondering, as we think about, we may see 2020 being a year where we've seen more overdoses in this region than ever before. I know the numbers aren't final, but it's certainly been a terrible year for people for a lot of reasons. What do you think, and Jen, I'll kick it to you first, but what do you think we can do and what's being done to address these can't arrest our way out of it issues?
Yeah, thanks. So maybe I'll take a moment to talk about the process that you mentioned in introducing me, that we've been referring to, the crisis response stakeholder group that, along with Chief Brown at 911, the County Department of Human Services, and folks from the city and the various police departments, as well as our behavioral health providers, came together with community members to really take a look at our crisis system across the county and identify areas where folks are falling through the cracks and where we could tighten the safety net, broaden it, look for new opportunities and new strategies, including the kinds of work that Dan and AHN are doing in collaboration with police to really try harder to meet the needs both of first responders who encounter folks who may have behavioral health needs, and give them an opportunity and more alternatives to connect people to support and care in the community, so that arrest and jail need not be the only alternative whenever possible. And so I think, Laura, as you mentioned, like this group together sort of came up with a vision for an improved set of services that really does focus on connecting people to human services and behavioral health supports that are community-based, that are really focused on engagement with folks who I think there was a strong sense that we need more peer involvement and a focus on peer support. So individuals who have lived experience of our systems reaching out to their peers to engage. A sense that we need more mobile capacity. So again, in the vein of the work that AHN is doing in the city, bringing folks to enable people to connect with police while they're where they are, and provide care to people where they are, and also to make our sort of existing brick and mortar resources, including the ones downtown, more accessible to people. I think I'll just mention briefly in terms of resources downtown, we do have some wonderful resources for people, and I think this stakeholder process where we heard from really from hundreds of people in the community through our feedback mechanisms too. There's an appetite and a real sense that we need more places that are open during non-traditional hours. So places like the Pathway to Care and Recovery, which DHS did support the opening of this fall, which is focused on individuals who have substance use needs. It's open 24/7, 365 days a year. It soon will provide what will be called a safe place to stay. So for individuals who want to connect to substance use treatment and are ready to do that, but there may not be a place for them to go quite yet. The Pathway to Care and Recovery will have a place for them to stay. But just in general, that kind of model that has a wide open door, not just from 9 to 5, and is staffed with peers, is striving to be like a welcoming, warm environment where people are met with a curious inquiry about how they need to be supported, but not coerced into any particular kind of support. I think that's what we've been hearing loud and clear, that we need to move towards more of that, more often, more frequently, and not just downtown. So people do go downtown because it's a place to be, it's a transportation hub, but I think we know that we need to improve access to our services and our crisis response throughout the county, and that there could be real sort of important collateral impacts on the existence of folks downtown when we build out more across the county and allow people to potentially stay in their home communities more easily too.
And Jen, I think you hit on, so many important points, and all of this is a really important shift in the way that people have been thinking about how to care for people in the community and how to support them. And I think it's never going to feel fast enough, right? We feel like we needed this yesterday, but I think that, as you mentioned, Pathway to Care and Recovery and the recommendations coming out of the crisis responder stakeholder group, what we are fortunate to have is some excellent and visionary leadership right now beginning that process. So we have Dan and Lieutenant Lackner on, and I wonder if you could both share what you're seeing with people downtown and with people in the community, and how your partnership is trying to do, as Jen said, trying to address people where they are and help them to access the resources they need.
Sure. We've heard a couple terms in the past few minutes: public safety and first responder. And I think we're slowly but confidently redefining what those responses mean. Public safety is not just fire, police, EMS anymore. Dan's group in particular has been instrumental. And like right now, they may be considered a second responder, but as far as I'm concerned, they're really a first responder. They've been right on our heels and have been able to be collaborative with us in terms of diverting people to services they need. Our beat officers are there, they're present. We've increased the number of beat officers we have downtown, whether they be responding to, you may see them responding to a call or getting a cup of coffee or having a meal, or they're engaging with businesses as much as they can. Our downtown substation is available to anybody to stop in at any time to speak with an officer. If you don't, you should expect and demand to see that. If you're not seeing that, please call our office and we'll get some folks moving your way. But I want Dan to talk more about it. Their collaboration and their response with us, right beside us, has been instrumental.
Thank you, Lieutenant Lackner and Jen, because that really sets the stage and groundwork for everything that needs to happen downtown. I think the really fascinating thing that our team has been noticing in partnership with Zone 2 has been that initially, when this was just conceived of as maybe an alternative or a support to public safety, was the thing that we had seen very often in the news, which was, well, the culture of police will require a long time to change. This is something that officers have been inculcated into for a very long time, and there would be some hesitancy or resistance to having other people enter these spaces. And what we found is wildly to the contrary. Officers have expressed a need for support in these situations, and they've been expressing this for a long time. And it's really interesting now that we have the will, both politically and at the level of the nonprofits, to step in there. And it's been an incredibly positive response. There will be situations that may have previously been a call to police because there's an individual experiencing intox downtown. This is a situation where maybe historically officers would have shown up on scene. They try to figure out, who is this individual? Where's he going? What's going on here? Do we need to call EMS because there's some indication that there's a substance use involved? And the fascinating thing, and I think the thing that's probably needs emphasis and re-emphasis, is that the teams that we have selected, the individuals on the teams, and then the process of working on the street is a process of relationship building. So, when some officers from Zone 2 will call the Zone 2 team, outreach team, to show up, more often than not, it's someone that they already know, and more importantly, they already have a relationship with. And I think emphasizing that, these relationships for individuals who are experiencing social isolation, and that's just one of these critical pieces of the entire puzzle, is how do we address social isolation for people on the street? This is the foundation of getting people into care and some of the services and supports that they need, is recognizing that it's through the context of a relationship that people are more willing to receive services, and they, I think, feel more supported, and that they're not alone in having to enter some of these institutions or walk through the front door of some organization that they don't have any connection to and really don't understand. So, it's been extremely positive. The officers have been extremely collaborative. We have case conferencing every week now, and I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, Lieutenant Lackner, I feel like that room keeps growing. More and more officers keep filling into these Zoom boxes, just eagerly hoping to connect, I think, and get a better understanding of who they're seeing on the street. You know, is this a guy that we should revert to you? Is this a woman that is maybe not okay and actually needs services, and this is not a criminal behavior? And those conversations have been, I think, fascinating and illuminating for both teams, you know, on both sides.
And the reason you see more participation is because they see that it works. Law enforcement, policing, historically has been given a certain set of tools. And we've discovered, you know, recently, and like you said, we knew it was there, but we just didn't know how to do it, right? And we've served as not just law enforcement, but as street psychologists for far too long, and we're not particularly professionally equipped to do that, and that's why it's working.
So can I ask you guys what, you know, we have a lot of community members and people who, I mean, you may be hearing about this for the first time. And so I don't want to get too in the weeds as I'm listening to people cutting the grass outside my apartment. So nice. But I wonder what this, when this works, whether it's, you know, mental health response, co-response, building out these systems, what can a community member who's not participating in the engagement or not participating, not the person who's receiving the care, what might be the difference and what's a realistic shift in what they might see in an area like downtown?
I would like to think that they're going to see us caring for people instead of just hauling them off to jail. And I want to be really clear with the community. If a violent crime occurs and that person needs to be held accountable, we will take them to jail. I don't want to misconstrue that. But now we just have those additional tools in our toolbox. I hope that addresses your question, Laura.
I think from a community standpoint too, you know, what you might see is that someone who is in a crisis, there are people who are sitting with them on the street. You may see this a lot more. I know that our teams have expressed that, you know, they're just sitting on the curb or they're, you know, out on a walk with someone, you know, getting a coffee, having these conversations. I think what the community can do or what the community's participation might look like would be first what we always say, which is of the utmost importance, and going back to the social isolation piece, is recognizing that when you see someone panhandling or when you see someone out on the street who's in a situation that you go, oh my gosh, that is a profoundly undignified situation for that individual. So regardless of however you may feel about that, maybe optically, the fact is that person is going through something pretty difficult. And I think recognizing that and recognizing how isolating it must feel to, you know, we have a bad day, we go home. No one has to see us. We can, these people are, it's out in the open, and it feels really bad, regardless of what the behavior may look like. Their lives are out there on public display. Say hello, give people, you know, a wide berth if they're, you know, going through something. And maybe most importantly, take a moment and just try to understand whether what someone is going through is actually criminal, if this is something that is actually threatening the safety of those around that individual or that person. And then, you know, maybe it's not a call to 911. I know that a lot of these calls come through, and the hope is that even when they do come through, we'll be able to step in and support that individual. But some of these calls, especially the ones where individuals are just outside and you're not really sure what's going on, think about putting in a 311 request, you know, a non-urgent municipal sort of complaint or request where you can go to public safety online, go to the homelessness one. Our teams get those directly, so in real time. So if you see someone and you want someone to respond to that individual, or you just want to feel like you don't know what to do, but you want to absolve yourself of having witnessed something that you know is not okay, put it into a 311 request, and that will come directly to the outreach team. And they're usually responding within an hour to these situations. So there will be someone who will follow up on that.
And I do want to add that that's a relatively new development. So if in the past you felt like you wanted a more rapid response to 311, or you've hoped for something a bit different, we now have, you know, as Dan mentioned, partners who will be reading every 311 and responding to them in as rapid a time as possible. So we do encourage you to do that. Also from the standpoint of really understanding what is needed downtown. You know, we have police reports, we have calls for service, we have dispatch codes or dispatches, as Jen mentioned, but really putting that into 311 helps us to also understand sustainability, scalability, and the resources that may still be lacking and in need of development. So shifting gears a bit, we also know that many of the people that we see outside, I think the assumption is often that people are experiencing homelessness. We have a really critical resource in the winter shelter, which was extended through June 30th this year, just to ensure that people have a place to stay as long as possible. Historically, and even this year, and then this is, you know, maybe a question for Dan and Jen, where do people go when the shelter closes? You know, we know that that's a major reduction in the number of places for people to stay, and sort of what happens to them when that occurs.
I can weigh in, and then I'll pass it to Dan. I think as always, when the winter shelter closes, and this year the winter shelter probably needs a different sort of shorthand, because we are keeping it open through the end of June this year. But it will close at the end of June. We are all very much looking forward to the new low barrier shelter that we had, the Second Avenue Commons, that we had a presentation on during this discussion. But when the shelter closes this year and always, I think there is always an effort to connect as many people as possible to programs, to supportive housing, but also I think we need, and we have an understanding that some folks will engage and some folks won't in those kinds of services. I do also think my understanding, and Dan, you can probably speak to this better than I can, but that we do often see that when the shelter closes, many people depart from the downtown area and may have other places to stay. And so that's not to say that we won't be, you know, our network of outreach workers and homeless services providers and behavioral health providers won't be paying attention to that sort of trajectory, but that is a pattern that I think we typically see. But again, I'll sort of emphasize that there is always work with the folks who've been staying in the shelter to try to get them connected to other services. That takes time, and people have choice, and so it's not something that anyone would attempt to promise will happen by or on June 30th. But that is the process and the hope that people can get connected to as many supports as they may need and want. And then I think just to add that we can explore other strategies too, other opportunities for the sort of downtown ecosystem. We can explore ways to keep comfortable indoor spaces open during the day through the summer and fall. I think from DHS's perspective, there's a real willingness to have more of these kinds of conversations, to hear from folks like many of you listening about what you may perceive as needed, and to also hear from the people that we're trying to serve what would help them best, and from the sort of frontline outreach workers and staff in our existing resources. But things like spaces that may be open through the summer, those are possibilities. I think we can also just think about more concrete ways to address folks' basic needs, things like more public bathrooms or that kind of thing, where we're really open to these conversations, as well as the the conversations around, more targeted outreach and proactive outreach to folks who may remain downtown.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jen said. I think for the winter shelter, where do individuals go afterwards? So something that we've always noticed is that when the shelter opens up, we see individuals that we haven't seen during the warmer months, and so there used to be this thought that, hey, these people aren't really homeless, but they're coming in and they're using this resource. Why are they here? We haven't seen them out in an encampment or on the street the rest of the year. And it was sort of this phenomenon. Then we started talking to people, and I think this is maybe a hallmark of a program and staff who are really digging in to do the deep work that is necessary in order to get people housed, which is trying to understand the context and the circumstances and the social and environmental factors within which these individuals navigate their own lives. And so we started having these conversations, and you can recognize that, and I think this is a point of emphasis, people do have another situation, as Jen alluded to. Often it's not a safe one. Often it's not very ideal. Sometimes they're couch surfing. Sometimes they're staying with a family member. Years of complications with mental health, or substance use issues has really made those, I think, relationships and those situations fraught. But it really says something that people are willing to leave their community and often a private or semi-private residence to stay on a gym floor in the basement of a church downtown, where you have every walk of life coming through. You're afforded a little bit of space on a mat. So those situations that people are leaving are certainly maybe they don't necessarily qualify as homelessness or the definition of homelessness from a HUD perspective. I think maybe the important thing to recognize is that we need to look at this from the perspective of safety. Do people feel safe where they are? There are lots of people who are housed and they are not well in those spaces. So there are a lot of individuals utilizing shelter who are really, whether we recognize it or not, contracting for safety in those spaces. And so, recognizing it as an ecosystem, as Jen said, is really important, and trying to understand the other factors that really affect where people stay and their behavior is something that's important, that I think some of these programs are really doing well. And I think we need to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think, it gets, and Chief Porter from Port Authority asked a question, sorry to call you out, Chief, but asked about the census of housing challenged people downtown in the city of Pittsburgh. And I think, that's probably a really nuanced question. I know we could maybe talk about the point in time and the methods, but certainly the time of year and what's really defined as homelessness, which is living in a place not intended for human habitation, or staying in a shelter. Whereas Dan, as you were saying, if someone's doubled up, couch surfing in and out of a situation that may be unsafe, then that's not the sort of HUD federal definition of homeless, but it's certainly people who may be utilizing the services in the shelter. I did try to take a quick look at the point in time, and I don't know that it's broken down by neighborhood as to how many people were identified in any particular area, but I don't know if anyone wants to kind of talk briefly about how the number of people who are homeless is determined, and how it may be, maybe we see overrepresentation in the downtown area.
I can say a little something. This is not my precise area of expertise at DHS, but I can share a bit. So the point in time count that Laura is referring to counts unsheltered homeless individuals. It's conducted annually on one night in January. And I'm just looking at some of our data. We've shown a consistent count between 48 people and 66 people over the past 4 years. except for 2020. There was a spike in 2020, which was due to actually expanded outreach efforts that identified a higher number of unsheltered people, primarily in the Homewood and Penn Hills areas of the city. So the spike was sort of not associated with downtown per se. The count of unsheltered persons in downtown locations during the point in time count is quite low. It may again not be 100% representative, but in 2019, 5, in 2020, 12, in 2021, 4. And so that's the unsheltered or street homeless population based on the point in time count that happens on one night in January. And that doesn't account for folks who may be staying in shelters.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that part too, because those numbers are really deceiving, but because it's done in January for downtown, especially, individuals can enter the Smithfield shelter. So that's a separate part of the point in time count, but those numbers may be otherwise deceiving. I think also the method, and this is something that's widely known, is that the point in time count is probably the best thing that we have to try and understand how many people are outside, but it's very imperfect as far as a metric for understanding who is actually out there. One, because it's conducted on one night, or where someone stayed for one night. It's also on often, if not the coldest, one of the coldest nights of the year. People are extremely resilient and resourceful on the street. They will find a way to be somewhere sheltered. They're typically not just laying out on the street. And so it's difficult to enumerate individuals who on that night. We've done historically a count in the summer just to try to better understand what those numbers might be like, taking out the weather factor. But also the individuals who are tasked with counting are often either service providers who work for nonprofits who have a couple of hours here or there to kind of steal away and try to walk the streets to count these things because it's a massive effort, or they're volunteers, well-meaning volunteers who'd like to participate and walk through the neighborhood and try to understand who's outside. So, for all of those reasons, it's a complicated figure.
And I just pulled up my data on the emergency shelter census, so I can briefly share that if that's sounds like that may be of interest. So the winter shelter, again, typically open from mid-November to mid-March to provide additional shelter beds during the winter months. This season, as I mentioned, the shelter is going to remain open until June 30th due to COVID. The number of people served during the current season is down from last year, even with the longer time period, which is perhaps due to decreased capacity at the winter shelter because of social distancing protocols. But the counts of persons served year to year, looking at November 2018 to March 2019, is about 993 in our homeless emergency shelters located downtown. In the same time period of 2020, 599, and from November 2020, sort of we're in process now. We haven't reached the June mark, but the count is 562.
Trying to type those up. I know some people may be interested, and if helpful, we can work with Caitlin and Jeremy to send some information out at the end as well. The point in time, as you were discussing it, I think that it's important to note that the point in time is required by the federal government to sort of show how programs and systems and what's called the continuum of care in the county, how it's functioning and operating. And we have a really rich provider network and a lot of great leadership. And the point in time being high or low is not necessarily an indictment of systems. I think it's more importantly a North Star for us, or something for us to say, hey, wait, look, we found something. How do we become responsive? and address that unmet need and that unmet issue. So I think even as Jen was saying that there was much greater outreach, and certainly Dan can speak to that as well. There was much greater outreach during the last point in time. What it did show us is that there were some, I think Dan used the term hidden homelessness in certain neighborhoods. So it didn't look like people in tents. And it doesn't look like people under bridges. It looks a bit different. And so what we see in downtown is not necessarily what we might see in East Hills or what we might see in Knoxville or any of the municipalities outside of the city as well. So Jen, earlier you mentioned the kind of importance of neighborhood-based services, and Dan, you talked as well about hiring team members. I wonder if either of you, and certainly Lieutenant Lackner, please chime in on this too, because it has an impact on the officers and public safety. But what do you see as a strategy or a plan to keep services in the downtown area where we know people are, but also to have adaptive services in communities that might be able to help people such that they aren't traveling for service? I know that was kind of a whopper, so don't all unmute at once.
Sure. So there's a lot there. In terms of decentralizing services, I think the main push is to try to say, okay, we have a lot of services concentrated downtown. So in terms of talking about the state of downtown, recognizing that, you know, when people have a court date or when people have to go to treatment or they have an appointment with whatever provider, a lot of these services are really centralized around the downtown area, which makes sense in terms of accessibility. You know, public transportation runs through here. It's certainly the literal and metaphorical confluence of a lot of things. That said, you know, if you're engaging with someone who is in, we'll use Homewood, for example, there are 72 stops that they need to pass through in order to get downtown. That's tricky for someone who just needs to access something really basic like healthcare. So I think prioritization, and, you know, and Jen and I have talked about this a lot, is trying to figure out how do we reconnect people back to services that are in their communities so that we don't ultimately or inadvertently sort of fragment the communities by just sending them outside to access basic human needs. You know, we've probably heard this a lot in terms of food deserts, right? Talking about how do we have to send people outside of their community just to get food. And there's something that's undignified about that. People should have access to healthy food. But what about all of the other needs that people may have, basic human needs that they have? So I think the goal of this is to say, to the extent possible, and this is a long-term goal, how do we decentralize some of the things that we are seeing downtown into the communities that people are coming from, right? Knowing that, you know, Jen talked about peers, and we said, you know, there was a lot that was said for just trying to identify what people need and peers, you know, people with lived experience or shared experiences. But, you know, from a community perspective, what is a peer if not a neighbor? You know, this is just a person who has a shared background and set of experiences that you can relate to on a very human level. And they constitute a great deal of support. And so, you know, in many ways, the service industry is nothing more than recapitulating what we've known as human beings for, you know, I don't know, thousands of years, which is that we need to get together to support each other and share experiences and try to work through things together. I think the goal would be to try to put people back in their own communities with people who have like experiences and help them not have to leave, right? And really can rely on the people that are around them. So yeah, I think in terms of decentralizing, that's, I think, one of the most critical things.
I'll just briefly add, I mean, I echo all of that. And I also just, I want to lift up that there is incredible neighborhood-based, community-based work going on all the time that we may not hear about, but that, you know, we're certainly interested at DHS, and it was a strong recommendation that came out of this crisis response stakeholder work to sort of really focus on community-led and operated prevention and response efforts. So that does and can, and we hope will take many more forms than it even already does. But really allowing the sort of like natural support systems to connect people to preventive care in ways that can help people avoid crisis systems is, I think, something that we'd all really like to focus on.
And it comes to my attention that we are not finishing at 11:30, but hopefully very shortly. So if you're all experts in the various areas of work that you do, and obviously we have an engaged group of community members who want to help. Dan, I know you mentioned 311, but just in parting, are there any things that you would like to leave with the community so that they can be part of the growth and safety of their neighborhoods?
I guess I would just invite, as Laura and Chief Schubert did as well, that we at Human Services are always eager and welcoming of ideas and feedback, even especially when it's critical of our existing services and systems. We want to be positioned to do better and be responsive. People should expect us to help them find care in easy, dignified ways, and so that's what we want to always be doing better, and we need to hear from people. And so I would invite that feedback always. And then just to mention, beyond the 311 call line, I think we do want to figure out how to make some of our other existing phone numbers help better leverage them in new ways. And so that, again, part of this work, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think that's part of how the public will be able to help achieve some of this vision around taking some of the burden off of law enforcement, is when we give them more alternatives for how to connect with resources and services and educate around those.
Yeah, and I think the 311 in a very concrete way, people can make referrals. And I think if you do that, certainly include your contact information, because the team will directly reach out to you and give you an update on what they're seeing, and they'll be able to get, I think, hopefully more detail about your experience as well. But also, and maybe the less gratifying answer, is recognizing that people in these situations are your neighbors. You live in a city and it's incredibly diverse, and that's a part of the richness and the health of a city. Think about how you as an individual can change in your attitudes and even your approach and your rhetoric around some of the things that you see, because it does matter, and it may be not in an acute instance, but just cumulatively, the attitudes that we have towards people who are in crisis matter. So, if you're having a conversation and someone's complaining about someone who, for whatever reason, was going through something publicly, chime in, recognize the humanity in a person that's having this experience. And I don't even need to say it, but I think we're all capable of being in these situations. And so trying to support individuals who are in them currently is something that's extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, well, to piggyback on that, we'll continue to be engaged and present in the downtown neighborhood. Yeah, call 311. If you need to see us right now, call 911. And I think we're inspiring confidence in people that we do experience 911 hesitancy. People don't want to call, but I think now the public may understand that that doesn't mean we will just come and take someone to jail. They maybe now understand that we have those additional tools to serve us if they see someone who's in acute crisis. That we can engage and help them.
So I want to thank everybody on the panel for their expert opinions and their also continued work. They work a lot, and we really want to make sure that you all feel that. And so thank you for your time today. And Jeremy, kick it back to you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to this panelist. I know this conversation I could sit here and listen for hours. There's so much work and thoughtfulness into this work, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys taking time to share that with us today. I'd also like to thank Director Histrich and Chief Schubert for joining us. We're extremely grateful for their leadership, both the City of Pittsburgh, the Mayor's Office, the Department of Public Safety, and the Bureau of Police. I'd also like to thank the County Executive and the Director of DHS, Erin Dalton, and her team for all the work that they're doing, as well as our private service providers who are out on the streets really doing this work day in and day out. There's a whole network of folks. We just touched on a few of those directly, but be aware that there's a lot of folks doing really compelling and thoughtful work around this. Of course, I'd like to thank our panel, Dan, Jen, Acting Commander Lackner for their time, and our moderator, Laura, who has been tireless in this effort, and just a great colleague and resource of mine as we kind of wrap our heads around how we can best work with the business community to support individuals in need. I'd like to thank Linda for her leadership and bringing Second Avenue Commons to fruition. It's going to be a transformative process. And lastly, I'd like to thank you all. Many of you stuck with us a bit longer than you anticipated, but I think it just shows your keen interest in being part of these conversations. There were a number of questions that we did not get to directly, but you can continue to be a part of these conversations. We have a monthly Clean and Safe meeting that happens now virtually, but one day soon in our offices again. We also have a quarterly community forum in partnership with the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust that all of the downtown stakeholders are invited to. If you'd like to get information on those meetings, feel free to reach out to us. You can respond to one of the emails that you're receiving with information and follow up about this recorded session. And we'd love to have you as part of those conversations. You can review the State of Downtown Pittsburgh report on our website. We have our last of 6 sessions happening at noon, where we're going to talk about all the future development that's happening in downtown Pittsburgh. So a very exciting conversation. Thank you all for joining us today, and stay safe. We look forward to seeing you all in person really soon.